I got a question for John. I'm curious, having been on both Next Generation, Voyager, and Deep Space Nine, if there's one that you enjoyed performing on more than the others, or looking back, you like those episodes more than the other two?
I think that the dynamic, the tension, the dynamic in Next Generation was more accommodating for what it was that I wanted to do. Also, the stories were more of a philosophical nature, which is better for the character of Q than, you know, whether Q loves Bosch or, it was just it's a bigger character than that type of storyline, and those storylines were a lot of heavy lifting. But in Next Gen, and for me, the one that was the most successful was the series finale. For me, they did say anomaly maybe 50 times more often than they should have, but other than that, while I didn't have a great deal to do, every scene I felt was very etched and articulate and delineated, and it gave me and the audience an opportunity to see Q in a really specific facet, so I was particularly pleased about that one.
Oh, Mr. Lancie, my question is about your time on Stargate. How easy was it for you to go from being Q on Star Trek to your role in various episodes of Stargate?
How easy? I mean, it was fine. Stargate was not it was an okay character, and maybe I should have put more into it, but there wasn't a great deal there. So, you know, it was okay. Right, I gotta get run over by it. I started in prison tonight.
Mr. Delancey, first I gotta say, easily my favorite character from Next Generation. You've mentioned before that, you know, it's hard for an actor to elevate himself above the material, and not all the Q episodes were the best, but you were hands down great in all of them still. So I think you were wrong on that one. Obviously, I'm a Next Generation fan, and I always thought that you and Patrick Stewart always were great on screen and had a real theatrical quality to your performances. And I know Patrick Stewart does a lot of stage work too, and you mentioned doing a lot of shows. Have you guys, since the series ended, worked together, done anything on stage? And if not, have you done anything with any other alums of the franchise?
I haven't worked with Patrick. I do a couple of plays a year, or at least a play a year. This year I've done 2. So I still do my shows. Ed Asner and I were on the road with the Tennessee Monkey Trial, which was a wonderful show. And then I did a new version of Life is a Dream. I have worked with some of the other actors, but that was really when I hired them to be in the Alien Voices shows. But Alien Voices doesn't exist anymore. And then I wrote about 6 or 7 shows for the LA Philharmonic, Disney Hall, and I used, who did I use? Armin Shimmerman, you know, those I can't remember one. There's an interesting, you mentioned the fact about stage actors. Yes, Patrick and I both are stage actors. It doesn't make things better or worse. I mean, one of the first movies in which I did was with Bridges, Jeff Bridges. And I was just amazed. I mean, I think he's one of the most wonderful actors that we have, and he had never done a play. And I was just amazed. It does give a little bit of a chewing of the scenery sort of quality sometimes to our scenes, Patrick and I. And a lot of actors, or a lot of people, fans would say, is there some sort of relationship between Star Trek and LA Law? Or is there a relationship between Star Trek and West Wing? And I go, well, the only relationship, they don't talk back and forth, these production companies, and frankly, probably they don't watch each other's work. But the connecting tissue is that many of the actors are probably stage actors, because stage actors have to spend a lot of time floating big texts, long, complicated texts. And Star Trek is less of a television show, as far as I'm concerned, than it is a teleplay. And that's why I think so many of the scenes worked well, because they had those type of actors, and they were shot in that way. And they were stories that were intended to be that. Sometimes when you watch stories now, I watch 24, which I thought is a good show. It's not. It's not about handling that type of story and you know, with those type of actors and what have you. So those are the connections in terms of theater.
Mr. Lancie, some years ago you co-wrote a book with Peter David called IQ, which had all sorts of delightful craziness in it. And I think it was maybe here at Dragoncon at one point where you were here, you intimated that there might be a further work with Peter on that score. Have you thought about doing another work with
No,
Peter?
we haven't thought about doing any more work, although I just saw Peter yesterday, and we're going to sit down and have dinner with each other tomorrow night, and it's going to be really great seeing him. He's a really talented writer, and it's fun, so maybe we'll talk about something.